But let's move away from that and talk about commodities, because there's been yet another tariff threat by US President Donald Trump as he announced plans to double tariffs on steel imports from the existing 25% to 50% effective from the 4th of June to secure the steel industry. The announcement came during a speech at a US steel plant in Pennsylvania, and right after that, his Truth Social post stated that the tariff on aluminum will also be doubled. Let's listen in to US President's announcement on this.
We are going to be imposing a 25% increase. We're going to bring it from 25% to 50%, the tariffs on steel into the United States of America, which will even further secure the steel industry in the United States. Nobody's going to get around that. So we're bringing it up from 25%. We're doubling it to 50%, and that's a loophole. And
okay, but what does this mean for our markets back home? Let's get Ashesha to break down what this latest tariff move could mean for our markets as well as the global economy. Ashesha.
Well, yes, it was just in February this year that Trump had gone ahead and increased tariffs on steel and aluminium from 10% to 25%, and now this has been increased further from 25 to 50%. Trump says this is to protect the domestic steel industry, but largely on unexpected lines. No one expected this increase from 25 to 50% suddenly. Now let's also talk about US steel imports then. Morgan Stanley has come out with a report, and they say that this will US imports about 17% of its total steel requirements from the world. Canada, Brazil, Mexico and South Korea. These are the top 4 countries which export steel to the United States. And as far as aluminium is concerned, Canada is the biggest exporter of steel, of aluminium to the US. 79% of imports of aluminium into US come in from Canada. So no major impact as such on India. In fact, we did speak to a whole host of analysts, and they believe that we could see some amount of sentimental impact on prices as far as steel and aluminium is concerned, now that the world will not be able to supply to the US. Supply in the global market could surge, because of which it could come and flow into Indian markets as well. Remember, cheap imports of steel and aluminium into India have been a concern for the last several months, and that could intensify going forward on account of higher tariffs that are likely to be imposed now by the United States, which will now stand at 50%. So yes, supply into Indian markets could increase, because of which steel mills will not be able to increase their prices going forward, and the same applies to aluminium as well, and that is the reason several of these steel and aluminium stocks are in focus today.
Okay, Ashesha, thanks for taking us through that. But we also spoke to our expert Aditya Velekar, the Senior Research Analyst of Metals and Power at Axis Securities. Let's also go across and listen into what he too had to say on double tariffs on steel imports and its impact on India.
Here domestically, we are having a safeguard duty which kind of protects our steel imports, and we have seen that steel imports have stood down for India, but at the same time, if we can see on an import parity basis, the steel prices coming from China are almost at a similar level to our domestic steel prices, or even a few percentage point below to our domestic steel prices. And with this increase in tariff, it will further put pressure, because the Chinese will increase their competitiveness and will further lower their offers to exports market. So it only increases our competitiveness and our risk for domestic steel prices. Our steel mills will not be able to hike steel mills further from the supported levels.